98%.
There's supposed to be 90.
Like 98%. We need to get additional. Lights. And at that point,
So we need, didn't have all these right away.
We don't. Is he really No, I'm talking about. It's kidding that.
All right, we're back in session. We moved some things around, as to take on further inspection for, so we're gonna move to the capital projects, organization activity.
So I mentioned yesterday, we're gonna start a, capital prioritization activity. These blocks at the front represent our full $644 million CIP for the general fund, okay? This little break here, everything to the right, your left is, the future of the CIP. And everything on your right is what is within the 5-year purview, okay? So these light green blocks are identified funding. That could be rolling stock loans, grants, or contractually obligated projects that we have to spend money on. The black are the ones that we cannot fund, and the green is the amount that we have available to fund through just general fund and our debt model. So today we're going to be doing a 3-part activity, and it's going to start with creating a team capital budget. So we're going to have 2 teams, and both teams are going to create their own capital budget. We have blocks to spend money. So this is what we have available, current steady state as we are right now. And then each, the lighter money is if you choose to make different funding sources with the capital investment fund. So if you add a penny to the capital investment fund, you can add additional blocks to spend money on. So you will have $84 million to spend on projects over the next 5 years. Those are the projects that are on the boards around the room. And that is the same list of projects that you guys did the priority survey on. So our for each 1 cent increase, it's an additional $24 million in funding. And if you increase the SIF, you should plan to spend it all, because that is what is going towards our debt. All of the projects have to be fully funded. We can't partially fund a project, with the exception of annual payment management. That's the only one that can be kind of sliding. You can do as much or as little of that as you would like. So there are 3 project stations around the room. First is facilities over here. In the front middle is transportation projects, and in the back corner is our parks and recreation projects. So there is going to be staff members who are in charge of these capital projects near each board. You can ask them any questions that you have about the projects. And each project board contains the title, the project cost, the resident survey information. So it tells you what goal it aligns with, which focus area, and then what rank that focus area came in, and the % of money allocated to it in the survey by the residents. And then finally is the staff scoring on each project as well. Alan handed out a piece of paper. This is for as you go around the room, if you want to make notes as you guys are talking, maybe you're considering a project, but you don't want to spend the money yet, you can mark up this sheet as much as you like, but it has all the same information that's on the boards. And it also includes your council score as well. Once you decide which projects you want to fund at each station, you're going to spend your blocks. These are each worth $2 million. So there's a table near each station, and you'll spend your blocks to fund the projects, okay?
How do we deal with projects that don't cost $2 million?
Yes. One of the strategies that we have done is, as you're sitting at a station deciding on your projects, if you wait until you've selected a few, it's usually kind of washed out to spend the block. And if it's slightly under, another category is probably slightly over. We're also going to have an analyst working with each of your groups. They have the spreadsheet live on their laptop. So if you decide, I want to fund this project, they can put it in the spreadsheet and they'll give you a live running total as you're making decisions. So you can put projects in, take them out, and see what that will do to your bank of funding that's remaining. as you mentioned, the handout and our budget team. So we're gonna have 1 hour to build your CIP. And we're just gonna split you guys down the middle of the room. So it will be Mayor Gilbert and Councilmember Reese, and then Councilmember Mahaffey, Chairman Ed Moo. Will be the teams for today. For reference, I'm gonna leave this up on the screen because that isn't on the boards anywhere, so you guys have this information as well. So you guys can drop the money to each team.
While she's doing that, I do want to say thank you to Jessica and the budget team for putting this together. They put a lot of thought and effort into how we could do a simulation for you all. 'Cause it's one thing to look at things on paper, but it's another to kind of live it and move it around and see it and see the impacts of your decisions right away. So thank you to Jessica and her team for putting this together, and to our director team for testing this out. They made it a better exercise by tweaking it.
So this smaller pot, this is the 84 million that you have to spend the darker blocks. Like I said, the lighter blocks are, I put them in sets of 6 because each penny additional is the 24 million. So 2 of these will have an extra penny. So have you guys be the green team? And you guys
How do we account for Councilmember Gray's? I mean, I know his is embedded in that, but
Yeah.
like, I feel like this is a key exercise to be having, and then just to be. I have a hard time determining. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. You've done a great job putting this all together. I'm just trying
The only thing we
to.
can say is you do you, because he's not here and we were trying to bump this up so that we could salvage at least having Councilmember move
Okay.
here.
Yep.
So it's the best. that
So
we
my,
can.
my issue is that there will be an outcome and then there will be a synthesis of that, is this is what council said. And that feels unrepresented or miss, 10%.
I think this happened last year too. And then Councilmember Ray kind of just reviewed and then take his input kind of on top of that. Right, so.
This will have also, I see 3 voting members, our facilitator and another voting member, obviously voting in tiebreaker. A way we can have mayor on one team with 2 members of council. And then that way we're like 3 and 2. So we kind of got
we can split one member over. Does that work?
there you go.
So I'll also tell you that we're not, I mean, yes, we're gonna get input from this, but it's not binding at this point. Like, there's still discussion. And the second part of the activity, which Jessica didn't talk about much yet, is bringing the teams together so that there's consensus across. So there'll be a point where you're all hopefully gonna be on the same page. So there's opportunities for the teams to click a little bit.
Yeah.
But don't.
Maybe then it's just effective to have 2 members, and mayor on one of our teams.
American
Like a
vote, whatever you want.
like a 3 on
It's up to you all.
basketball, whatever.
We'll split the group. One.
Let's go for our team.
Oh,
All right. So where do you want them to start?
Start with the crowd on the same board. Argue with what analyst is listed.
All right, so.
Station, 3 stations. Yeah.
She's got her computer. I mean, I can tell that I'm useless. I'm really useless. I'm useless.
You are not.
I know 0 about CIP.
If we're already.
Right, yeah.
So let's have Stacy.
Are you
looking for?
See what you got, and then we'll just.
You just gotta watch.
Well, and I thought.
Yeah, that's what.
That's back out.
Oh,
You mean that?
We're still Facebook friends, like, theory. Yeah, that would make
I was just gonna, I was cheat sheet.
basically my house is like. People started. My husband's not. So y'all, it's literally on the text messages, right? For what?
Why would he not be wearing pants?
I'm not even saying but it's
Well, what explanation could there be? There was somebody else what? Well, sure. I mean, I assume. Were they not?
I don't know. I'm not in there.
Right.
I had.
And I don't know.
I had all chat.
What's a hot nasty?
What do we know? What do we not know?
I don't know.
Yeah.
That was, like, anybody knows this, that's one that we just.
Visiting, there was a visitor, there was a visitor.
Yeah, it looks like we can bump, I mean, now that I have.
Sure.
Oh, no.
Center Street Rail Crossing improvements. Yeah, I had it as, 18 mil. I would have played.
The other one here.
Probably did, because that's why I know her. She was.
I had it.
Person road quarterbacks, like, I had it all. Yeah.
I am.
I might have to go home and take it.
Okay, well, that. So about,
Yeah. The sun was.
Texas say that. Sorry, but.
Now, if we're. I had to go only because it cost.
Have we got some sort of water? Where's facilities?
The other ones.
We got a water fixture here or something? Are we gonna put it in the water? What's that?
We didn't.
I don't know.
It's been there for a long time.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
I'll just say it's, I think it's a junky repair because it's been there. It's all about saying it probably, it was probably done by someone that's not even working here.
Hey, let me tell you what. No offense to anybody who was working here, but at one point, I threatened to pay my own off.
I know
That's
because
I got paid.
when David Wilson left, they did.
I said, just give me the paint, I know it matches, and the facility was like, Marty, not this Marty, different Marty. That Marty. Yes, MM. He's one of my favorites. I love the MM story.
But yeah, he was like, oh, we're gonna need it this one day. And this, I was like, look, just give me the paint so it'll match. When I'll go in and we'll get it painted. He was like, I'll do it. He wouldn't do it, Dave Rollins either.
No, because they gave, they had put the art in for the new town hall, and they gave
Yep.
David Rowland a piece of art that was law related. And she put out, so he went to retire, so you know how they do the badges for the police, and they gave it to him as a retirement. They put it off the wall.
Yeah, yeah.
So I had to find like stuff on the wall.
I had to do that. I had to go scavenging because because Hank had a big piece of something. And when he left out. Well, it's not that story. Whatever. I was like, oh, I know. He was like, oh, no, you can't tell anybody, but you're having one because other people want it too. And I was like, do I look like so he's the one that I had not been here long at all. And he was sitting outside Bruce's office waiting to go in. And I walked by and he was like, hey, and now look, y'all, this was 22 years ago. And I'm not, you know, I'm not upset. Marty and then, oh, I've got lots of points, but so I said, you know, Marty, I'm not mad. I'm not upset. I'm not, you know, none of that. I said, but I said, I don't feel like I would be doing my job as like an attorney for the town of if I didn't say to you, it's probably not a good idea to tell women in the workplace any kind of dessert product. Cupcake, none of those. Just ice cream, whipped cream, nothing. Just leave it. I thought, okay, I'm being cute, I'm being funny. I'm like, this is keeping it light. So right before he retired, he thought I was. I'm a secretary. After that, and then he figured out I was okay. But I was like, oh, I went just like that. Anyway, that's one of my favorite parts. What you got?
Lean on my door and it's like, I just tried to chit chat because you're not. I was in one of those nights.
Yeah.
But he tried to friend me on like Facebook,
Instagram.
And one time I had my hair was dirty and I had it put up in a ponytail and he was like, oh, yeah. No, dude. Just stop. Just stop. I actually saved this tonight. For real. He said when I saved this tonight.
Was he choking on his fish bun?
Nope.
Okay. Yeah. Go ahead.
He came in my office and I sat down and he dropped his pen. He over his pen and I saw on the top of his head. I go, I'm not trying to be rude, I'm just telling you. A couple months later, find out he had, we had to have like a bunch of them.
Yeah. To get it off.
Big theme of what my.
So we call them seven, so they.
Good, right? So like Hunter Street renovation.
Like, I go to. Wait a minute, here comes walking in. He's on with us. I didn't tell him.
He called her. Yeah. So Georgia was where Dimitri, yes, sitting down. And I was where. And I don't know. There's such.
Only reason I'm pitching is I'm thinking about. People working on the box and first year.
And I would be like, it is so cold. And he took me with the kids, sit with the big old park.
And like with the man, was saying that it's- That's okay. Just, we don't work here.
right, we're unmuted.
I'll write in one.
They might.
What you guys?
Well, I'm okay.
Okay. All right, so we, great exercise. Take a 15-minute break now.
Yes, sir. They're gonna compile the results, bring it together, and do discussion with coalition.
2 o'clock.
It's all call, right?
Great.
the, trees. This is, that's. Hey.
Okay, so part two of this game, I'm just gonna come right here from the middle, is to have each team present the balanced budget that they created. These are the types of questions you can consider talking about as you're up here. What did you fund? What remained unfunded? What funding level decisions were made? How did you, what factors led to the projects that you selected? And then what kind of trade-offs were the hardest? This information is going to be important for part three, which we took all your projects and we added another category, and it's the projects that you both chose to fund. And so that's going to be the base of your final project selection. So after you guys present and share all that information, then we're going to have you guys come up here with a new set of boards, and it'll tell you how much we funded all together in agreement, and then you can fill in the rest together as a group. So does anybody want to go first?
What do you think? You take it and you sit right here and watch them.
Green team's got it.
Which name? Chime in.
Right.
Oh, you want us up there?
Yeah.
You're supposed to be up
You
there to the
can't
front.
really
We're supposed to act it out.
Yeah, come on. Yeah. This is charade. That's a kid.
We unfunded. You're not funded? I thought we funded. It's not a sheet.
That's-
My feet.
that's
No.
Question.
Were we green or blue?
Green. Yeah, you're green.
All right, doesn't quite match mine. Whatever. Okay.
What's?
I thought we were throwing stuff on there. We had town solar.
Yeah, I thought we
Yeah, you
did.
did.
Yeah. Yeah,
Should we move it over?
Just scooch over, yeah.
little bit of money there. So what did we fund? What did we unfund? What fund decisions? I guess like one of the principles that we talked about was like one, finishing what we started. So a lot of the projects were things that were in progress and they got priority over some of the newer greenways and stuff, for example, that were, we thought might be a part of maybe a future bond that wasn't contemplated currently and not included in our tax increase. And, what factors, I think pretty much all that stuff, we looked at, we had a matrix up there. We're trying to, at one point, look at what's in the green box and what we're missing from the blue box. I personally was biased towards things that are highly visible too. So a lot of traffic lights got checked off there. And what trade-offs were the hardest? I don't know. You take that one.
Yeah, I'll take the hard question.
Yeah.
Just take the softball.
That's
I
right.
was kidding. Like for instance, Wimberley Road Park, I have highly ranked. It's also a very, very cost-intensive project. You need that park. It's tough right at this juncture to justify $99 million when those funds seem to be able to be allocated pretty efficiently across several other projects. Perhaps you already mentioned it. I was going to say, and I think this, I don't want to put words in your mouth, Councilman Zegerman, but we were talking about, let's keep the things that we have built up to date before we initiate future projects. So it was, let's, keep all those lights on and then look at additional projects. But I will say that for me personally, it seemed to align with what some of the things, like you said, about visibility, transportation projects were 4 out of my 5. And they seem to be somewhat agreed upon.
Yeah, public safety, space, of course, facilities is heavily represented. And, back to the park, that's a good example of a project where if we were to do that, there'd probably be a bond associated with it, its own funding source, and probably a couple pennies that would go into the SIF from that bond that would fund the park if we do it. So it's an unfunded spot. So that's about it, unless you want me to just go down through the list. But what are we good? All right, we're good. All right, so that's kind of our principles.
All right, Sue, come on.
Okay.
Do this.
Yeah.
Right, very similar approach for us. We kind of tried to knock out a large number of smaller projects, that's including ones that we know that our residents have been asking for, which are mostly like traffic related situations. Optimizing what we have, right? So before we start building new parks, new greenways, like what can we do with facilities that we already own and operate, and improve the functionality, extended functionality of some of those facilities. And then on the facilities, you're kind of prioritizing some of the space considerations that the staff outlined yesterday, but also kind of looking at sequencing of things, right? How in order to do anything with the downtown fire station, we need to complete the fire station number 3 first, right? So kind of keeping some of the order of priority in mind. For me, it's like the trade-offs, the hard ones. It's really I love to build new things, right? And finishing what we started, right? So we have a number of projects that we have already done design work on. And we've been talking about them for years, right? And see to what degree we could prioritize those. I love to build new things, right? But the new things, especially Parks and Rec, are just prohibitively expensive right now, and I don't really see how we would do that without a large bond issuance, right? And so what we ended up doing is that we did reallocate 1 penny additional to the SIP, to pick up a couple extra projects. Including things like the environmental education center, right?
The greenways.
And one of the greenways, because Sue was particular to the Rio Branch Greenway. But yeah, so we did add 1 penny to this SIP funding to make all of this happen.
Yeah, I think our priorities is traffic. Projects already funded, started, and public safety. For the environmental and greenways, just once, I think we added 1 cent for the tax increase. I was debating the Waverly Road Park. If we issue a bond over 20 years, and the future residents, they can contribute to this park. We have this 2 cents, tax increase. I was, debating. Actually, Wembley Road Park, we already allocated 1 million in design, right? Design this year, and that part of the town, we have a big population, and we don't have any parks and amenities like that. So actually it's necessary, but it's costly. So yeah, I guess we have to ask, residents or make balanced decisions.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's 4 categories going up. These are over here projects that only the green team funded, only the blue team funded. These are the projects that both teams funded. There's quite a lot of overlap. And then this is the group of projects that neither team funded. So you guys can come up here, and what we're going to do basically is what you just did in your separate teams, but this is the base of your final budget. It's about 67 million, if I'm remembering correctly. But I would have the spreadsheet so that we can add projects, either that you each team individually funded, or if you want to look at the unfunded ones. Come on up.
All right. Are we gonna arm wrestle over this?
Yeah.
We're all gonna.
Yeah. That's all.
Either way, I think we're gonna be on the losing team.
I thought.
We spent 67.8 million.
All right.
What do they have left to spend, Jessica?
$16.1 million left. And, that is, yeah, and that is with no 1 cent increase. So both
Okay.
groups did decide on a penny increase. So if you want to do that, you'll have an additional 24 million as well.
Can I humbly pitch to our colleagues on the blue team? Or let me ask you a question. I was just curious what your thought process was behind funding. Commerce.
The downtown, the way that we looked at that, like the dollars didn't change based on the discussion this morning, right? Because we have reallocated some of the outstanding balance already to the Salem Street implementation, right? So it's kind of in the spirit of finishing what we started, right? Like we started Salem Street, let's finish the little bits of Commerce Street that we might end up completing, and then Seaport, albeit with somewhat reduced scope, but kind of finishing that side.
Great point. Can I just ask a quick question? Are we able to talk about splitting something if that's not the full 4 million that we need there? I was just, unless you were, because you're right, that's a whole that we didn't have, was allocating the.
If you want to choose to fund just part of it, because.
That, I don't know, that was gonna be
Yes.
my team meets, I don't know. how you folks get it.
That we only do.
Before we go there, I just had a question about this, with the Davis Drive and Salem Church Road realignment.
I think
Which I-
you picked.
Yeah, we added in that one in later, once we decided on a penny increase. And that's just one of those areas of town where I think we're gonna continue to see challenges with the traffic and traffic congestion. And we gotta bite the bullet at some point. It's not terribly high on my priority list personally, but just for overall residents, and traffic flow in town, I think that one will become more important as we go on.
And that was high for me as well. One of the things that came up in our discussion was property acquisition that could factor into making that project work for the long term. But I do agree, it's been a lot of emails and DMs to me about that.
What's the cost of that?
So like, it's pretty expensive. Can I ask why you guys decided to fund both the Link North and Jesse Drive Phase 2?
I think it was so Jesse Drive is finishing what we started, right? Like, again, trying to make that connection and, really get the traffic help Leeway North. That was one that we just missed out on funding this year, but I think we looked at it in the 5-year horizon that we'd eventually hit with black funding for that. And then we would do it at that time. A lot of this stuff, like, it's hard to assign the year, because really what I want to do is when the money's available, when the matching funds are available, we can leverage our dollars. That's when we do it, whether it's tomorrow or 10 years from now. So that was one where we thought as we were adding stuff in with Penny, we were like, well, probably in 5 years, pull the trigger on this. Same thing for the I think that was the one.
Southwest.
Yeah, Southwest was again,
Sorry, you didn't ask that.
yeah, Southwest was, yeah,
Completely missed that?
no, that was one that, again, looking at the 5-year horizon, it's a big price tag, but we think that area is gonna be, pretty busy after the bridge opens and, the one about widening, at that point. So, yeah, a lot of this stuff was like, I wouldn't wanna do it this year, not gonna push for it to be in this year's budget, but just considering the 5-year horizon, that seems to fit in that window at some point.
Can I ask, why you picked these two greenways? And let this one out.
Well, these are the ones we live near, right? And you live near that. Yeah. It's actually not true. Frank gave us an arcade in the middle of the creek, because that connects Apex, Perry, Holland Springs.
Yeah.
That's the problem with single member districts, by the way.
And this one, this one, because this is fairly new area, right? We don't have any greenway on that area. That's why I think we need one. Yeah. Not only I live there, okay?
I say Middle Creek was the hard sell from Greg and the connectivity with Perry and Holly Springs, and Beaver Creek Greenway renovation we thought fit with the theme of kind of improving the facilities that we have. That's the one that has, you know, the flooding and everything. And, you know, get a lot of complaints about that. And I was sort of, again, kind of bisecting the projects into stuff that I think the brand new stuff, the expensive stuff might be a bond we'd have to debate. We talked about it last year. And that would be a multiple cent increase in our SIF over those years. But if we're not gonna put that in check, you know, 4 more cents or whatever, then that kind of goes to the side. Now look at the projects that are more about rehabilitating the assets that we have. So that's why Beaver Creek Greenway got renovation was on there. And I think we left off the Beaver Creek expansion.
Right.
For that reason.
Yeah, and so kind of going back, so I know that Sue, it'll be the one at the Reedy branch. So I think $7 million for a metal work Greenway is a little bit too rich for my blood, but I would rather do a renovation of the existing facilities. So I'm perfectly okay kind of trading, or I would be okay trading that one out for, you know, maybe the renovation.
Actually, I think when I did the survey, I actually picked this one high priority. But today I got confused by
That's my fault. So in the middle, like we left off because we kind of like, you know, maybe rolling the dice a little bit on that one. Because that's on the states kind of trend, states connection map.
Yeah.
Right, and so I can see the state wanting to, you know, prioritize that at some point.
Yeah.
You know, let's put funding at all.
And you know, that's something I want to stress, I guess, as well, as a lot of these decisions are made without the knowledge of what we're gonna get grants for or not. And when we receive funding, I'd still encourage staff to apply for all the grants for projects that make sense. And we get funding that dramatically alters how we would do that. We do wanna make sure we're leveraging the questions we can, so.
What's next?
So a couple of decision points. right?
Yeah, so we gotta move projects that we agree to both fund.
This one?
Moving these three.
And half of,
That's the extension or the renovation.
The
The
renovation.
renovation
Thank you.
is the one that we said.
I got the number two, Jessica. So then we're moving this one to unfunded. Like the re-
Okay.
And maybe is there consensus about the penny or not? Because that changes how much you have available. I heard Jessica say 16 million with no
Now we're at 8.
8 with no additional penny. If you add a penny, then that gets you another
24 million.
24 million. So you have 8 left. If you add a penny, you get 24 more. So 8 to 32 million.
if you're paying.
Let's do it all.
You wanna do a big thing like,
Recognizing that you're making this decision in isolation of what you might have to account for operational tax increases.
So you guys didn't include public safety station 7, your.
Yes.
That was,
Yeah.
Do we have?
you did, and again, I just thought that was outside the 5-year window, and that we're gonna build, you know, renovate 3 and then build the admin building, and then public safety station 7 would be the next thing, but fall outside of the window we're talking about here.
I saw it as a high priority, long-term project. And so that's why it was bumped down in terms of.
Okay.
But I mean, there's another argument for urgency.
So my take on that one is that, you know, that area will continue to grow even with, even if we stop any and all improvement, zoning right now, right? There's still a lot of, development that is queued up for this area that hasn't happened yet. We're already kind of at the brink of our response times and meeting our commitments, our SLOs for that area. So I hear what you're saying about it potentially being, you know, more than 5 years out. But, you know, I think it's important that as we develop the town, right, and want to be responsible for sort of public safety will remain of, you know, a higher importance to me than park infrastructure.
That does include a penny.
We have
Yeah.
that.
Yeah,
We would have
one
to-
right, yeah.
Debate.
Any cost median residents.
What is the cost per year?
$50?
yeah. Yeah.
Or, yeah, thousand, something like that.
Average, like
Okay,
that.
average. Thousand, agitation.
Well, then we get a little bit more.
So just, you know,
This is an exercise we're doing, but there's a formality to whatever we say.
Well, so this is gonna guide us as we build
Yeah.
this year's budget,
Right.
so we'll come back to you with our proposed CIP.
Okay.
And so there's still room to make changes, but we would go off of your initial direction today,
Yeah, that makes
increasing the
sense.
SIP, so yes.
Just painting the picture, because we also
Yes.
recognize your isolation, we have utility increases to
Okay.
ponder, operational increases to ponder, capital.
So we might, let's put it on right now, but
And what did it leave us with, we had the 24 million, we gotta, you know, is this the total? Okay, so timeline, so it's something that we deferred, but added back, if we had the money, again, finish what we started, we did year 1 and year 3. I'm okay again with kicking it down the road a couple of years, again, timeline, so but over a 5-year period. Get back to
so we kind of ended the penny late, so it was getting a little bit of mad dash. We ended up throwing in the Wimberley Road sidewalk. And then we ended up with about like 850 left. I would take Wimberley Road sidewalk out on town solar.
All right.
And then,
We're getting there.
Yeah.
It's getting more of our own. So,
take Wimberley Road out.
and again, fine with not funding this year to make some states. And then,
Which one's that?
This is the Wimberley Road, we're gonna move to
Unfunded,
unfunded.
Did you guys add any?
Yes, okay.
these, again, that's something that I put in the 5-year, but then we get money. And we match it, you know, we've already got bonds and stuff, and we did the design, and we're ready to go, we just waiting for some matching what we missed out on, but if that hits, we'll probably feel like that's. So we have,
Let's see, 12.5.
oh, funny.
Yeah.
Just,
Yeah,
let's go ahead and knock it out.
yeah, both, I mean, we're not gonna do that.
Oh, yeah, that 4.
Davis Drive. Super.
yeah, so Jesse Drive, we didn't do
Yeah.
because I still hold out hope that some of that will be developer funded. I guess those properties.
Yeah, private, yes.
Especially now that there is development in that area, I think it's become a little bit more attractive.
How much?
4 million left.
4 million, okay, we
That
have,
could be Mill Creek, or that could be something that we.
Mill Creek.
Great, sick of it
Can I ask?
Who lives here?
Diane's the one not laughing, right?
Nobody.
Diane.
I have a quick question I was gonna. Thank you. I was gonna ask transportation about what came along with the wayfinding signage fabrication and installation just from. Oh, I'm sorry, maybe that's not, maybe it's Shannon. Is it Shannon?
Yeah.
Or cool.
Wayfinding sign. That's what's included in that number, Jessica, but,
I believe it's those
The
larger
whole
signings like.
Yes,
so,
yeah.
okay.
Just the next phase, the current phase is sort of behind on, so that probably will be next year.
Yeah, but this was the largest pictures, like kind of the main exit roads, right? Like that, that's that 8 banks.
It would be on the roads out, I'd have to go, I'm not sure which side, but the second, phase, we've already done prioritized signs. And then this one, I think a lot of the main signs, the most important signs, will.
I'll make a humble pitch for it. The reason why I see it tying in with economic development is because of the tourism initiative that's ongoing. And I know everybody's got Google Maps and everybody can get to wherever they need to go. But if you're just or you're kind of in the area and you're like, hey, we got a Saturday afternoon. What do you want to do today? Let's take the same road. I'm just thinking about opportunity when it comes to that. I could see the practical pushback on it, but I just wanted to say I saw it as an economic development.
4 million remaining.
Okay.
Can we round
What
off?
about this, sidewalk? I think it's important for them.
He's picking up some unfunded.
Yeah. Breaking the rules.
Yeah.
This is good one. This, I think, sidewalks, we need it anyway, right?
I think that's one that I thought we'd do, closer to the park. Like, and if if the park's
Okay.
not funded here, then I wouldn't fund that. But if we did the park, I would do that too, to, connectivity around the park area.
All I'll say is if we fund this, we'd have $2.4 million left. And
There's
you're gonna get some money back from that in terms of economic. No, economic goal will work on this check. Yeah. that's what I'm saying.
So there's one over there, you guys are talking about funding, the other three, is there consensus to move them unfunded then?
I think it's even,
I think we can do this, yeah.
That was the only one.
Yeah, then let's save 2.4 million.
There you go.
Let's save 2.4.
Or,
There you go.
you know, we can just pick up a couple of small ones here. Right? Like there's still the Chatham Street sidewalk for 2 million. To
2.4.
round it out.
So I'm fine with that. I was gonna say,
kind of like sidewalks were.
We could get a lot of. residents starting to have that.
All right, we'll move Chatham Street sidewalk phase 2.
Okay. Yay.
So those in essence become unfunded. That's
Yes,
what they're
those all come to unfunded now.
left. I'm gonna
We're
move them
left
just to.
with this?
I always
Yeah.
need these.
All right.
Good job.
Got it.
We don't have to.
no wrestling.
We don't have to fight, okay? We solve the problem.
Geography, all those again, that's funded. Where they located.
Yeah.
We can make a map.
Can you report them out? maybe,
Yes,
so
sure.
All staff can hear.
All right. So in our our funded projects, our annual pavement management, Apex Peakway at Tingen, Go Apex new bus stop, Olive Chapel at Apex Barbecue improvements, Richardson Road at Core Banks traffic signal, S-Line Mobility Hub, South Salem Street Bicycle Connection, EV infrastructure, Fire Department Administration Building, Fire Station 3 renovation and addition, the Hughes Street Mixed Use Development, Environmental Education Center, Hunter Street Park renovation, Kidstown Playground renovation, Town Campus Stage, Chatham Street Railroad Crossing improvements, Center Street Railroad Crossing improvements, GPS emergency vehicle preemption, street hockey and inclusive playground, depot parking lot repurposing, Beaver Creek Greenway renovation, downtown projects for Commerce and Seaboard, actually just half of that project, Public Safety Station 7, Townwide Solar Initiative, Apex Peakway North widening, Apex Peakway Southwest widening, the wayfinding signage program, and the Chatham Street Sidewalk Phase 2. So that is what is moving forward. So thank you all for
So this will form the foundation when we bring the budget forward, kind of use that as a guide and then still tweak and massage from there.
Just general comment, I think the mayor just started down that path. I've been through this a couple of times now with the stickies and all that. This was a lot more entertaining, I think a lot more real, right? Because we have pictures of the event out the projects and things like that. I think it made it a little bit more concrete for me.
Awesome.
Well done.
Yeah, I think it's much, easier and better to understand than the survey. When the survey, you saw all those numbers and all those lists, it's hard to make a better image. This is much better. Thank you. Yeah. Yes. Mhm. Yes.
Okay, regrouping. Now I think we are a little bit ahead. So John, I told you 3 o'clock, but if you're ready to go now. Surprise. Hey, John! I think Sean's coming up too, to kick it off. Sean! Sean loves applause. And while they're doing that, the one item that we have decided to tomorrow, because we'll be down Gray, Councilmember Gray, and Councilmember Moose getting ready to depart to the council policy development session. Alan said that we could do that hopefully while we're eating lunch, maybe tomorrow. It could be a discussion with lunch.
Okay.
So let's
Yeah.
move that there so everybody could be present.
Okay.
Yes, yeah. Yeah.
So in theory, this is the last thing for today.
Oh, yay.
You don't love this?
I love brick, okay?
Great.
So, Mayor, Council, so John and I are going to tag team this next presentation. So part of it, and I'm going to start to fill in some of the background and update since John's only been here a few months. I'm mostly familiar with what this is, but I think it's important to give a little context where we're going as we talk about how utility billing, what we worked through, what's been implemented, where we're the pace that we're taking, what's next for us, and the improvements that we're making. So this will kind of show some of that. And then there's some things that we need to talk about that are on the horizon. And that's what we're looking for a little more direction on. We have a proposed timeline and plan, and John will get into some of the reasons why behind that and the numbers. But to start with, I'm gonna kick it off. So with our update about how we return to our standard operations, because really for a year and a half now, we have not been on our standard operations. We've had to make adjustments. We've pivoted. We've had projects. We've had different interruptions, and so this is how do we return to what may need to be done, which is really best practice from a financial and business standpoint. So this is where we're headed in this presentation. I just want to let you know the purpose of why we're doing this. You see that there, but in doing this, making sure that understand as we thought through this, we've been working on this for a little while, and a lot of communication questions, not just between John and myself and his team. It's also within Stacy in communications, Erica and her team in IT, and Darla's not in here. Darla's been a big part of these discussions as well. But it is about what our financial obligation is to as stewards of public money and within the enterprise. But then also we have a commitment to our customers and to our residents, making sure that we're fair and consistent with them as well. So in this, we're trying to make sure we capture those things. Real quick, this is where we've been. Kind of stacked up all the things you can see that we've been working through. So everything from July of 24, when we had our first interruption, we had to take the system offline. I just want to really reiterate that the event that happened was not in utility billing, it was not in our financial system. That's how but you had to take everything offline to make it secure. But when we did that started, so that's where we kicked off. That's what started the disruption in utility billing, and us getting back into where we need to go. So you can see everything that's worked on, everything from couldn't send it to our third-party recalculation. The process went through that. Then we have new software, whether it be the ERP and the financial systems that went on last January, MillSoft, the new billing system that went on that we put in place this July. The meter replacements you can see that started last year and have been going on. All these things piled up on her. That was never the intention. But what that's done is it's made it a challenge in utility billing to make sure that we're serving our customers like we do. Then you throw in, we've had quite a bit of staff turnover amongst that. So there's that challenge that comes with it, making sure you have the people that can do the systems in place, the process in place, but also the people that may be able to do those jobs too. So anyway, that's just there. The bottom one there, as you can see, we have not done any disconnections for non-payment or charged any late fees as we've been working through these challenges with customers since that last fall. So we're a year and a half in. That has not been anything that we've done. What we're going to talk about is what the impact of that has been and what we're starting to see. And then the plan, again, back to that standard operating procedure that we've had in the past. And we'll go through what that looks like, again, with those other principles in mind. So real quick, some of these challenges, again, you saw the calendar. This is just them in the list form, so you kind of see the different errors and some of the challenges that we work through. Some of them, us internally, some of them not our own making, but we had to work through them. When our printer just shut their doors and we had no clue, and we had to work to find a new printer for our billing. When the bank files that the bank sent over did not get in from the bank side, got cut. I mean, so there were things that we took the brunt of that, and we're not going out and saying, oh, we took the brunt of that. We had to work through that. But those are just the things on there so everyone knows what was happening. You can see the call log issues. Darla's mentioned that, but Randy gave an update on this really yesterday as he continues with our billing side. It's a diversity of things in terms of the issues we see that we're working through. Some of those have definitely started to shrink as we get to really what we're trying to redefine with our, looks normal for us now. Responses. So you've seen this and Randy's mentioned this as we've gone through. With Ask Apex, I just want to commend Darla's team and what they found in Marla and both working on that. When they jumped on board last year, that was not the plan. They were supposed to have another 6 to 12 months of preparation and study and getting things in place. And basically in September, I think we said, hey, we need you to do this. And so that delayed them coming into what you're just hearing about them now, to helping us. But that was about getting back to our customers, making sure we were being responsive. So we brought them on. We had to bring in extra help, plus hiring new folks. So there's a lot of, so we've been making strides to improve. We still have some things in progress based off of feedback that we constantly hear. That's the other piece I want to mention is that we respond to the feedback we get. So whether it be council or mayor from residents that come to you and customers, when it comes to us, we're doing our best to work with them individually, but then we're recognizing those patterns to figure out what are we fixing in our processes. Things like our bill design, it's got to change. Like where people are asking questions, we're like, that doesn't make sense. I wish it was a switch to flip a bill to do a bill design. It's amazing what you have to go through because there's a lot of back end and things, but that's in the works. So there are things we are changing to improve and they're coming. So we got that in progress. The point of this is just saying customer service is important to us. How the residents are treated, what they get from in their billing is important, and we want to make sure that the service that's delivered, we know they get high quality water, sewer, electric, power service. We want to make sure that then their interaction with us on the customer service side is just as quality as that. So working on that, moving through that. With these numbers, actually, John, do you want to talk about these numbers? Yeah. So with the numbers, I'm going to let John.
So this is just a table. This is an internal tracking tool that I've been looking at as we close each month the utility billing. This column here is genuinely, it's just the total amount of bills sent out, dollar amounts for all of your major services, garbage, water, sewer, electric, stormwater. So over the course of these 5 months, we've sent out across all of our major sources, $43 million of bills. Adjustments, it's when we've had to do like a manual change to somebody's account that has nothing to do with their consumption. So, the most common one on these is like some of the very done adjustments. Somebody writes a check and it bounces. We have to charge them a late check fee, things of that nature. And corrections is the most important piece here, which is that literally that is, somebody gets an extremely high bill. They call, they say, hey, my usage just doesn't make sense. Can you send somebody out to look at it? Send a meter tech out. Meter tech says, yeah, actually the reading was wrong. So the total net adjustment to their bills is here. And as you can see, that has been on a downward trend to the point where the net change in bills from what we sent out in January has only been about $73,000. Total overall, there's only been 930 accounts that have received some kind of correction since July 2025. And then I can just run reports out of MillSoft and I can see every time somebody's gone in and said, yeah, actually the gallons were different, kilowatts were different, things of that nature.
Less than 1/3.
Yeah.
So we have over 30,000.
Over 30,000 accounts. The percentage of bills, again, it's now down to the point where we have less than 1%, just raw volume.
So before you go on, so these adjustments and corrections could be related to anything, right? So how does this compare to the before times, right? So some of this is still reflecting some of the very done adjustments, like I said, right? That were, okay, we had challenges with our billing system and we're still fixing that. How much of this is considered normal, right? In terms of like, hey, we had a water leak or a misfire on the meter you're reading, right? What do we consider to be normal there?
I'll say, you have a lot of issues back in the immediate aftermath of us having to take the system down. And then you look at the data, charges are different for a couple months. This, to my experience, looking at the numbers, this is kind of normal, $200,000, is the kind of what I think it should be. And that would be, less than 3% of your revenue. Just a normal amount. Peter was read wrong.
Leak adjustments. of the common.
Right, so, again, I guess the basis for the question is like, how much of this is still cleanup after the utility billing issues versus this is just normal operations, right? Like, we can always expect some churn on the billing and with adjustments and corrections. I'm just trying to get a sense of like where that's, what the baseline.
Yeah, we can try to get.
We'll pull some more historical data. We were looking for the trends on this one, since the system conversion, so we'll pull that back into the whole system.
Because, like John's saying, like, $1, $2, maybe $300,000, like, seems to be, a healthy range, right? But I just kind of want to see how we were trending before July 24, right? To kind of have a compare on where we start.
With the next ones, I'll handle this. These next couple slides are just to kind of show the results of some of the things we've been working on. The service periods, that was a challenge when we were getting back online, kind of getting to a normalization of our service periods. That when I said that the readings that we try to target between 27 and 33 days. And so in terms of the tracking, really, I can try to pull back further with a little harder. So it's starting from this past March, though. So from March to this current January, so almost a year, you can see we've been relatively in that range. The dotted and the spike you see there, you recall that was in July when we made our system transition, and the numbers went out were not completely correct, and so the dotted line shows where it actually was correct. You can see that still actually held within that range. And if you look at the averages are actually 30. So we're holding those averages there, despite everything else we have done well in trying to maintaining when we're getting out and when we're doing the reads. So last August through December were very challenging. They were up and down because we were trying to reestablish the reads after getting off. We had an influx of, hey, you need to check the meter. Responding to every single one of those. Every time you're going out, if you're responding to 500 meter rechecks, that's delaying, that's their new read, right? So it's not on that initial read of 30 days, and then 15 days later, so that 45. So there's a lot of that going on, early in late 24, but just wanted to point it out that the service period has been normalized. We're in the range that is our target of 27 to 33 days, consistent. Again, some of the things that we're seeing with the system, this is kind of letting you know where the process has been. This starts in September, so this is the immediate kind of impact of when we got into our new system and when we were dealing with meter change outs and swap outs. You can see what we were kind of working through as our staff's learning the system. We're working with the meters. Missed reads, that doesn't mean that there's not a read on it. It means the meter has a read, but the computer did not import it for whatever reason. And so when we go to do the numbers, we don't see it. So we got to go back out and double check. That's what that is. You can see we're a lot fewer of those now. We're in the February cycle 2 is just like they just did the reads on that one. So that's what's on there. Less than, we're 0.2% of the meters are missing or having where we have to go back and double check those reads. So almost all the meters numbers are coming in as electric and water, and they'll continue to improve as we get all our AMI meters in place. So you can see we've improved, we level off and continue to improve on that one. And then on our variance reports, this is once everything's been run, we're looking at our numbers. Yes, you can see how many we had on it, and now we're down to roughly about 1,000, and that's been pretty steady. On our variance reports each month or each cycle, I should say. So that's it's about 2.5% or so. That February cycle one was a little spike, so when we got some electric meters changed out, we had to go back and get fixed, and there were some incorrect reads put in, but we got those fixed. But that's why some of those were showing up on the variance reports. So anyway, just again trying to show that we've been working through our systems, we're making sure, trying to normalize our processes, making sure we're making improvements and getting to what our new standard is and what we expect to have as a baseline, establish our new baseline, and continue to work to improve on that. So that's where we're.
So for benefit of the new council members that don't have the battle scars, like some others of us do, the variance reports and just checking my understanding too, is really a report that we run kind of proactively to look at historical uses patterns and the latest meetings to kind of identify things that look to be out of the norm for us to then follow up and make sure, that we research those and make sure that either those readings are correct or before we go out and get a better reading.
That's correct.
Thank you.
And so a little more detail on that. So we get, you see there can be thousands on it. They're based off of, so there's percentage marks set for what triggers it. And so things we look at the last 3 months of use, whether it's an individual use, the trend in as the average, and we can look compared to last year's average on that month as well. And so if it's over X percent, I'm not sure exactly what the setting is, but when it's over a certain percentage compared to those, it'll show up and it's on water usage and electric. So look at, is it a certain percentage higher? Is it a certain percentage lower? So, and it's a report that comes out and you have to put eyeballs on it. So you kind of look through it. It's not something that has necessarily been able to be automated yet. There's just knowledge that has to be looked at. So for instance, in these, because I've looked over a lot of them, especially back in September and October, I was looking for Robert's now in the room. Robert Taylor is our building collections director. He started with us in August, and it's been very instrumental with helping us get to this normalization. So appreciate John and his work on this and the team. When we look at these, we may have, like right now, we're 1,000, 1,200 on there. About 300 to 400 is actually what we're having to narrow down to. That other 800, most of those actually are like new accounts. It's things there's not really a variation on, but it's like, hey, the last 2 months were zero because no one's lived there. And now there's someone moved in and all of a sudden it's 1,000, it's 1,000 kilowatts, which is normal. But we have to kind of make sure we're seeing that that's pattern on it, versus then the ones that are really, hey, why is this 900% higher? Let's roll a truck or whatever it may be. Sometimes something. Check. So that is there is still a lot of manual work each time we run through that, make sure we're checking. But yeah, so it's 300 to 400 that we're having to, is that about right? 300 to 400? That's when I was looking at it. I know it wasn't you now, but there's usually a few hundred that we're having to, that we're having to follow up on.
And to build on that real quick, because sometimes I get asked, well, how did this one make it through? It's $100,000 bill. As Sean pointed out, it's a very manual process. And so at some point, a decision is made where we've got to release the cycle and get those bills out. And so we do our best effort to make it through the entire variance. But sometimes I think we have staff that are out, we have people on vacation, and we don't make it through the entire variance report. And that's where you still have some that are making through that are kind of like, oh yeah, of course that's not, but we just didn't get to it.
And we'll make that correction.
Yeah.
If it's wrong, we'll get there. The one thing we've talked about very recently is, in those instances, is we need to get to a better job of making sure, okay, if that's happened, we recognize that we have to send these because can't delay, you don't want to delay 15,000 bills for 2, right? But we got to get them out. We need to make sure we're contacting those customers and say, hey, look, here's what you're going to see, but know that we're correcting. So that's on us for that customer service side that we're running.
And I know I was up before, but how exactly is the variance report produced?
So with Robert, do you want to speak to it, or I mean, I can try and speak. Okay, yeah. So yeah, we'll let Robert come up.
Yeah, Robert.
While Robert's coming, it is a function of our software. I mean, so there's a report to run, and Robert can probably speak a little bit more to it.
Yeah, part of the billing process is that your report will come out whenever we calculate our bills. It'll give us a report based on the constant that were already set up before. So if a meter has read, let's say a meter reads 1,000 kilowatts. It'll look at for 3 months in the past and see what it did for those three months. It'll give us an average and it'll trigger that. And it'll trigger that account to go on that report based on those concepts.
Is that those criteria, is it in MillSoft? Is it?
Yes, it is.
So
Yes.
MillSoft has the ability to find. this
Yeah,
stuff?
yeah.
And we can change it. Robert and I actually just talked about today, where we're at a point now with kind of this normalization. Like, we want to start looking at what are those parameters? Like, you know, and does it need to be, you know, if it's 50%, does it need to be 25%, or vice versa? So we're actually at a point we feel like we can start looking at parameters a little more. Millstone kind of had an industry standard kind of set in there to start with. So, but we also know we'll get through these and we get 600 actually don't need to be on this report. They may be on no matter what, because of the, you know, you just can't, like the new accounts, they can't have that, but.
Yeah.
But there's other ones there, but there's
Yeah,
other
that's
ones.
kind of a perfect example of it. If it's a new account that went from 0 to offset 1,000 kilowatts, that's a 1,000% jump up. That'll trigger it. But we have the ability to change the parameters so we can lower that, lower that parameter so it won't trigger that one particular issue for that new account. Or if it's low or it's high, if it's then be able to do it for all services. So not just electricity and water, but sewer, garbage, and somewhere else.
We do have it.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you.
Anyway, I think that, and for the most part, I think that's kind of what I wanted to bring to council. It's just understanding. We realized we had challenges. Just want to make sure you saw that we've been working through the challenges. There's been a lot in, and that wanted to kind of demonstrate the improvements, you know, with what we've made. And so with that, there's other things we start to recognize. And that's what John, you know, going to come in on some of these numbers and what we're recognizing and getting back to our standard procedures.
So just real quick, caveat here, it's a very small asterisk, but I want to draw your attention to it. So the easiest way for me to get this data out in a way that is easy to analyze, present, is this is just everything as of February 1st. So of the numbers I'm about to give you, you know, we might not have for every 1,521 active accounts, but on February 1st. So if somebody comes in, disconnect, moves out of town, that's brought by one, someone moves in, it's control. So just context on that. So of the 30,000 change accounts, 4,348 owe us a number, and they've owed that amount for more than 30 days. We have 2,955 active accounts that have owed us for more than 90 days. So 8% of your customer base owes you a number that is longer than, you know, about 3 months.
You said 2955 included in the 4348?
Yeah, so this is just getting smaller. The vast majority of those amounts are residential. So about 88% of those 3,000 accounts or so is residential. And we know that because when I run these reports, it will show me what rates they're being charged, so I can see who is on residential rates versus commercial rates. Give you a profile of that. So this is I've split it up into, you know, kind of that 30, 60, you know, what I call long-term balances. Long-term balances are the amounts for more than 90 days. So we have that almost 6 million. Most of it is long-term. This is kind of the profile of what those bills look like. So we have, you know, for example, and this is important for what I'm going to get into is recommendation. We're bringing for you today is, you know, that there's a difference between somebody who has less than $500 for a long period of time. So, you know, of those 58 accounts that owe less than $500, they owe us a total of $10,000. The average amount is 181, the median is 156. When you get into the commercial and residential amounts that are long-term, you know, you're looking more in average bills of, you know, almost $2,000. Unpaid balances of almost $3,600. And then the maximum, the largest ones, there is a commercial business that owes us almost $50,000. And there are some residential customers who owe us over $10,000. Any questions about this information?
Again, like not here, but kind of baseline question, right? Like what's normal?
Normal.
All right.
We were
Long term. So if you roll back the clock to before any of this ever happened, The townwide, no, the townwide long-term balance was less than $400,000. As we get to the end of the last fiscal year, it really sharply increases. You have the cybersecurity incident with Blazing Bills in fiscal 25 all the way through June. The total amount that was long-term at that point rose from $400,000 to $3.5 million. So a lot of the balance is really from fiscal 25. And right now, as of February 1st, it is $4,131,000.
A late person's question around the balance due over 30 versus the balance due over 90. I mean, it seems like the lion's share of just feels like the balance over 90 have chronic underpayers or no payers. Does that 30 days, are you starting to see that as like a general thing? Because I feel like that 30 days might wash out in the next month. I mean, like part of it, or is it not, or are you starting to see a chronic issue?
If you go back to fiscal 24, most of the bills we issued were paid within 30 days. So I've kind of started to emphasize the amounts over 30 because they're rolling.
Okay.
The amount that isn't paid over 30 days now is, most of that is now rolling into that. Somebody's not paying now, odds are they're not going to change their position after the ensuing 60 days.
If you don't mind me asking one more question, because I see perhaps a few variables. One obviously is folks who just say, well, the town's had issues with utility, I'm not paying it. And I'm also wondering if you have economic pressures impacting folks as they're starting to see, all. And so I guess my question is are you seeing a chunk of those, or a large chunk of those 30-day overage paying some of their bill and just unable to pay the whole thing? Or is that like a rare condition and we just are starting to have more and more people just in the last 30?
This is a little anecdotal. I don't have specific numbers on this. My experience of it when I was looking through this information for this presentation is I was just basically picking random customers and looking at it. For at least the 90-day folks, there's very little, if any, payback.
Yeah, I feel like that's the focus.
They've stopped, they're still not.
Yeah.
You might see a little bit more of folks making partial payments. We do have a payment plan option that's live in the system, and it has gotten very few takers. The amount that's been moved to payment plans is less than $50,000. So just to give you some context, there are ways to smooth this out. If you own a large balance, but we're just not getting takers.
Thank you.
So talking about now the kind of town-wide financial impact, the way this works, is, we are issuing these bills, we are recording this revenue. This is kind of like an mathematical in-between between your fund balances and your cash running. Give you some context, about $77 million was your total combined utility revenue across all of fiscal 2025. So that lingering that kind of approaching large variance it's about 7% of your total revenues. Think about that in context of rates we set. In terms of expenses, another way to look at it is, it's about 53% of the CIP for garbage, water, and sewer in the current fiscal year. So, if you think about it long term, we can reasonably expect not to start not collecting a lot of money. What does it mean when we have to then slow down the investments we make in those services? We're missing out about half. I do want to point this out you have a legal obligation in a sense to collect this money. You can't just give people free utilities. But the books still have to represent under GAAP a reasonable amount that you expect to collect. So some of this has to be expensed. It might have to be written off. And we still have a legal obligation to collect that money, and we can eventually collect it one day, but the accounting records might have to give it for a while. And that becomes an expense. So, when we have to acknowledge that some of this might not be collected, it's going to immediately get that expense. It's going to reduce my balance. And it impacts rate considerations as well. At some point, if we're not collecting a lot of money and we need this cash to get through our annual budget, and we're talking about doing a rate increase because some customers don't
As far as the write-offs, how do we do that? Is that like a one-time end of fiscal year correction, or is that something that we take a percentage of the outstanding balance every month? How would we?
Right now, your normal, of course, to the point of standard operating procedures, it is an adjusting entry that happens at the end of each fiscal year.
Okay, fiscal year.
I'm curious, in your opinion, is this amount of, uncollected debt or the eventual, possibility of significant write-off put into, correcting our credit rating or the marketability of the bonds for these utility costs?
I think it long term could definitely do that. Probably the biggest single threat that I think is this is a lot of this debt is in electric, and you actually have revenue bonds with covenants on it. If you violate covenants, then it can make and the covenants require you to have a certain amount of operating revenue to collect. There's a ratio you have to hit. So the answer is yes, it could eventually reduce our credit. We haven't really gone to the debt market that much since this started, so it's also an untested.
Is it separate from our, internal obligation bonds or labs that we're doing for like some buildings and stuff?
Yeah.
Are utilities have a separate credit rating?
It's the same credit rating, but it would be when you do revenue bonds for like water, for example, they're going to look specifically at the health of water utility.
Yeah, I was trying to get a sense of like, could there be collateral damage to our bill bonds and labs? Trying to at least because utility would be limited to.
I would suggest you're going to see some burst. It could just eventually.
We'd probably be obligated to fill the gap with general funds if things go bad.
Right. The other part I'll note about this is since your garbage services are in the general fund, some of these utility revenues do more. The revenue, in theory, some of the revenues you have to write off. So now we're just going to talk about getting back to normal, and take some questions on that. So we're not currently charging late fees. Reinstituting late fees normally would be 1% on the outstanding balance, minimum of $5. Alternatively, we could do, if we want to kind of ease it, we could do 0.5% for 12 months. Just to kind of get to it. We do have, our historical standing practice is we could waive late fees for some customers, up to 2 per year. Let's say somebody misses a payment, they forgot to sign for auto pay. You're charging $5 late fee, we can take that off. So that is an option in terms of, getting back to an incentive to pay on time while leaving some flexibility for people. Disconnection for non-payment, our prior standard practice is, that's not where we would go if you owe less than $500. So there are customers that owe us those long-term balances that, if it stayed below 500, we would not be approaching them. We would not be giving them the written notice. We would not say 10 days prior, they're getting emails, door tags, things of that nature. We do have a payment plan option. We could charge a fee on that, but we're just saying, just for the sake of hoping to resolve this issue faster, we're not going to charge you a fee. We're not going to charge you interest on it. So if you owe us $3,000, you agree to split it over 12 months, and eventually we're made whole. We would not kind of put any fees or interest. I will note real quick, just for the record, so 12 months is a hard lock in the system. MillSoft, we can't go longer than 12 months. Got to be within. And of course, we would provide referrals to assistance programs, partner organizations like neighborhood. Somebody is in genuine economic need, we're not going to say we cannot help you with any restructuring type of stuff. Just as an example here, so if we have a $2,400 payment plan, we can split that up, $200 a month, and late fees, and that's what their combined bill would be. If you're not on the payment plan, you owe us $2,400, you're going to get those late fees, and it's going to. This is the proposed implementation timeline. If council is amenable to it, we would, we need to start testing and start making sure we can get this right immediately. So working with our software company, doing the appropriate tests, and make sure, you know, if we say we're gonna charge somebody a 1% late fee, and then it turns out mathematically for some reason somebody figures that it's 2% late fee, that's gonna reduce customer trust, so we would want to test that extensively before happening it. We would want to communicate with all of our customers. We wouldn't start that until June 1st. Start fee, or starting September 1st, you know, balances after September 1st, is when we would try to apply those late fees. So that means they get the late fee actually on their bill on after October 1st for those billing cycles. Full enforcement, we don't want to cut anybody off in the Thanksgiving, Christmas period. So, you know, starting this later this year means, you know, there's going to be a couple of lull before, it'll be February 1st, really, before we really start leading heavily into service disconnections.
I have a question. So we presumably we will not pursue a service disconnection if somebody's on a payment plan, correct?
Yep.
As long as they meet the terms of the payment plan. So keeping that in mind, why would we not start service disconnections? Right? So let's give people the option. You go on the payment, you pay us, you go on a payment plan, or you do neither of those, we're going to move to disconnect. But why push the service disconnection that far out?
So I'll take those through messages. So first, there's a kind of a practical logistical side. Right now, these functions are not set up at all. So the first couple months, we want to make sure we put them in, we test them. Troy is not in here in IT, but that's so there's just a practical piece to us. We want to make sure that we work with our vendor, we put it in, we run our tests, and make sure it's there. So we like to give ourselves 60, 90 days to kind of get the test, pushing out of there. Frankly, we just have a lot going on every July, and the last 2 Julys have really been some new challenge introduced to that. So, but so part of that is just with the fiscal year. We change over fiscal year. We could do that earlier. I mean, that's an option. It's not. We definitely want 60, 90 days to make sure we're testing and putting in. But beyond that, we could switch. But we know we have a fiscal year in. That's when we said, okay, you also have July, August is when bills jump for the utilities. So we know everyone's going to all of a sudden get hit with their biggest bills. If you're on our electric AC, your July, August, September bills. So we're trying to be respectful of what people may go through at those times. And because each time we started maybe June, and then we're like, okay, well, we can go into July, and it's like, or August by the time. So that's where this lines up to October is where that bill is, because that's when you'll start to see it down. So does it make it easier for, and we hope people will set payment plans up long before this. That's the goal. The late fees would go into effect. We want people to say, we want to get we want to have a window to communicate and give people time to set up their payment plans for you. Because if you're on a payment plan, there's no fee, there's no disconnect. And then historically, our standard practice has been during the holiday season, we have never done.
So my point being that if somebody owes us a couple $1,000, like charging them $25, it's probably not going to motivate them to all of a sudden run to town hall pay the bill. Right. So by pushing this out as far as we do, we basically give people another whole year not to pay their bill, let that balance accrue. Right. And the problem is going to be that much bigger a year from now than it is right now.
And that was a discussion we had. And this was, I mean, these are discussions that we've had and we collected in the group. I mentioned Marty and Randy been a part of this too. As we go through that, I mean, what is that level of kind of changing of behavior or that pattern? And so you're absolutely right. We lean toward again in that being a little in that kind of guiding principle of how do we regain the customer trust? How do we give as much time as we can? And so we're working on that. But yeah, it's you have that dilemma, and the choice has to kind of be made on which one we do. Because and yes, like logically speaking, psychologically speaking, the stick or hitting the pocketbook, cutting it off is actually what changes the behavior for the same time. That's what economic studies will tell you. So we're trying to find that balance of what that looks like. I mean, again, direction from council on this. We laid this out and we felt was a generous plan, a fair plan, and time to test, communicate, and give customers time to come into the system and not hit them at certain times where there might already be another hardship. So that's what we were trying to space it out. And then, yeah, originally, yeah, when it fell in February, it was kind of, that was a little longer than we originally looked at too, but that's kind of where we ended up. And keeping all those factors in mind. So I absolutely understand what you're saying and agree that that's too good to happen. Trying to find good purchases.
And at the end of the day, the October late fees, we could move the February date. I agree.
Oh, so if we start the service disconnection, it's line of the September 1st day, right? So that's my third, like now I'm just gonna start sending notice, right? So my first disconnects will potentially be in October. Right? And again, like I don't want to go turn people off, right? But I do want to have a bit of a forcing function to drive people into the payment plans, right? Because that is a lot more solid in terms of our collections than it would be just to let that balance sit there. Because even though things have been largely normal, we still see over the last 6-7 months, like $1 million accrued to the late balance, right? Like severely late balance. And so I think we need something to change behavior quicker than waiting another year, right? I also think that this needs to be paired with a crap ton of communication, right? And you know, here's what your options are. And, you know, hopefully people will voluntarily walk to payment plans, but if we only have $50,000 in payment plans right now, right, and an outstanding balance of several million. I'm not sure if that message is just not reaching the right people, right? So I think there's a communication plan that needs to be around this to support it. But my preference would be to be a little bit more aggressive with these disconnects because I think that's the main forcing function. Really line up it September days, beginning of October, we start both late fees and the service disconnects.
I would say that this timeline is, I don't know exactly what I expected. February 20%. I like the idea of aligning policy changes like this with the fiscal year in front of us first. You know, so I think, you know, if you can go a couple months, so September, July 1st, when, you know, new this year again, so that's when late fees being approved. That makes sense in a lot of ways. And then the dates further, I think we can start to the point where for the holidays or of course we can leave the calendar.
Say couple questions. One, trying to tackle the lion's share of what we just talked about, the 4.1 million of the 5.9. Unless perhaps I'm maybe too focused on that and I should keep my eye on the entire, but I'm thinking about two ends of the spectrum of potential customers who might be impacted by this. On the one side, it seems like there might be super violators who have no contact, haven't reached out to the town, owe a lot. Maybe it's even some of those commercial folks who are defiant in I'm not paying the bill. And then I think about the other end of the spectrum of your most vulnerable folks who are embarrassed. They've entered hardship. Let me focus what I'm saying. One of the first things is the timing. I'm worried most about those most vulnerable at the end. I know bills need to be paid. So I'm just wondering if there is another variable to consider, which is if you were to move that full enforcement up to around the top of October, I'm thinking about vulnerable, disconnected customer who's now not facing significant cold in February, not significant heat from the summer. Ideally, that October, November is a little bit more mild in terms of just the weather and them regaining their feet and figuring out, to your point, now I've got to get something I'm just thinking about those weeks, or days and weeks of folks who might be sitting in a cold house or a very hot house. That's the first thing. The other, and then let me talk last about the super violators, those, high accounts that are late over 90 days. Is there, just walked out, so I'm going to ask you the legal question.
Yeah. Good question.
Yeah, right? She anticipated it. Is there a way to focus on our efforts on that 4 million and those super violators and those over 90 days legally with an equitable? Is that justifiable legally, or does it not make sense even from a financial perspective or legal?
I think, essence, let me respond to those points with a point that I thought about a lot. Because these tools, these systems were not in place, there's not really an incentive one way or another for either somebody who's ingenuity or somebody who doesn't care and thinks we're just doing this wrong to communicate with us. So it is hard for me to sort those into buckets because there's no reason for them.
Yeah, right. Last question, and perhaps it was kind of like collections, like just turning these things over to, is there any viability to that, or does that create a whole nother set of law of unintended consequences and things that we got to deal with that?
So there's two things I would say to that. One is, we are going to do, we would normally think that we would also do debt set off, which is the program in the state where we submit debts, and then if any other state government agency has this money, they're obligated to settle up with us first instead. It's not as effective of a program as it used to be, but it is an option. Coming from, I had previously in the prior role been responsible for ambulance billing. We did send stuff to collections, but it was not as effective and it was not that effective. But in this case, because disconnecting the service is the mechanism by which you force somebody, like collection agencies, that's not a tool that ABC Collections LLC could do for us.
Yeah, and my final is there any kind of special investigation initiative that could be focused on covering that, especially from the commercial accounts and from those who've already moved? Because I'm imagining those are the folks who were
commercial accounts are in bigger balance is sitting with. Right. And so, there's absolutely people that will have economic hardship, but there's also, programs that we have to help those people out, right? Where we can qualify them, run that through Neighbor Up, right? Like the town actually makes a donation to Neighbor Up to help with utility billing challenges, right? For those people that are stressed. I think the baseline or the basic proposition here is that we have a legal requirement to go, right? And so I don't think we can try to parse out, this little group or that little group and go after them first, because we're, our legal requirement doesn't change, right? Whether it's you or Randy, whoever's not paying to, right?
I would say, Lori was in the room.
What was the? Yeah, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, my guess is we have to treat all constitution formally from a policy perspective, from communication and outreach perspective, and say.
Even if it's the amount that they owe, like if we were talking about the under 500 and the over 500s, and we were focused on the over 500s.
I wouldn't even focus that. Like focus, if it's in terms of outreach and like maybe call people, try to talk to them, say a certain amount in a letter, but in terms of like when we charge late fees, do the disconnects. My guess is that has to be uniform. That's that process.
Yeah.
But communication actually could differ. Policy.
To jump to what John's mentioned for that set off. So when you've gotten past the disconnect, for whatever reason, maybe a business has left or a resident has left, or that's when you send to get set off. And that's equivalent, of collections, so that you start talking about credit rating, whatever else, maybe working something a little harder on that. All those things. But so that is another mechanism that pass on to that. We're not mistaken. mechanism is the cut. And legally, we do have certain timelines and dates we have to hit to get that.
I'll just emphasize the enforcement with some compassion on the timing as a consideration.
And we've always been honest, that there's never been disconnects for non-payment during those seasons, at least as long as I've been here. Or it's, even before that. So
I'm just saying, we have had a nasty cold February.
So we do look at, so we try and, there's a customer service element that we have discretion on. We use, like, we want to make sure we're taking care of folks. And so maybe some of the extra anecdotal things that you think about what the segment you asked about previous. I don't have the numbers in front of me. I can't recall some anecdotes. And to kind of give some perspective to what you didn't ask about, that was great. As we went into COVID, our arrears numbers were like, that age balance was like $60,000 is what we would carry. So even if we saw, we were, so it was less than, a lot lower there. During COVID, this is what I don't remember exactly. I have to go back and pick up the number. But then that year, I think we got close to 2 million, but I'd have to go back and look. But then we saw by 2024, we were back down. So it was a few hundred thousand. So we were still higher than we had been back there. So I have some anecdotal numbers in there, but I'll try to see if I can pull those reports and everything. But to give it, what I wanted to go with that was that even through COVID, we came back down in the year after that. So but I think we suspended disconnections. It was the first. Yeah, we did. We suspended disconnections and late fees during COVID. I think we were suspended for that 1 year. And so we came back down. And so we got back down to where we are. So we're a year and a half, or 2 years at minimum by the time we put this back in place.
We had a similar conversation to this.
Yeah. I think there's a lot of, so within that, there are absolutely people that we have to be responsive to and have care for and concern for what their needs may be. And we don't know what is in the household and helping to change. But in looking at our history, there is a big portion of that 88% in business I can't speak to that they're just not paying. It's not for us to determine what their ability is. So that's why we want to be as fair as we can. And that's why we're looking for direction too on how to proceed. Just the timeline process. The legal requirement in terms of dates and things, that's set. But putting it back in play, where you want to go, what we're looking to flex. Those are the ones that they're going to respond to what you brought up. There's that what we expect to be that larger group on that numbers, but anecdotally, that larger group based on past experience that just hasn't paid. As soon as you do that, they're likely to start making the change.
I remember that when we did this after COVID, had that conversation. But the bills, like you said, it was like 2 million something, and it's got the same figures and what would happen, people it's back pretty quickly. I think we was a fund to help.
We do, and we still have money. We still have
funds still there. So that actually went smoother than I think this situation is. And I did have a question. Back to the payment plan thing. Do you guys consider, or could we automatically enroll some of our customers, for all of our customers who are in arrears for a certain date in the payment plan as of the date we start this, as opposed to having them come up, or do we just say, okay, everybody who owes more than this or more than 90 days, we have a payment plan. Or maybe those payments, you're good.
I want to start on this one, then I'll let John and Robert jump in however they want to. So my initial, just this is that'd be great, you have everything. But operationally, I think one, you want that to be optional because we've had a few people that have just come in and said, okay, I realize where we are. So we've been still working through a lot of accounts. And I've had personally ones where I work through and I'll talk to them and they're like, oh, we're actually good. And they come in and they can, and they're done. And we're settled. And so you could enroll in their plan, but then you also have those. The other piece of it is that you're automatically putting someone that may be on a hardship or a burden, have a burden. I don't know what that does to their their household. Because when you do institute that payment plan, you are adding to their monthly bill. And so I don't know what that looks like for them. And so personally, I would want to be cautious of that. That's why it's optional. I mean, we can talk, our customer service reps can talk with us. The third piece is, from a very technical standpoint, is if they are on auto draft and auto pay, and you just put them in there, and all of a sudden their bill is a lot higher than this, because we have had those challenges, even just in our system, when they disconnect and come back on, and then 2 and 3 month bill, and then you hit their account with, it's a lot more than they were used to. So, because potentially,
Well, in that case, it would auto draft these accounts, right?
well, the payment plan would set up to do the audit, like that amount. Yeah, it would.
Well, the people who are in.
Yeah, but right, that's what I say. But there might be someone, if someone that, there are some people that say they owe 12,000. We have at least one residents, I should say, $12,000. What can we do with that? That's the payment plan is $1,000 a month. If I automatically enroll them and their normal bill is $800, but now all of a sudden it's $1,300. I mean, that's a big jump. And so that's what that was like. Then we're getting a call of, hey, we overdrafted their bank account, that sort of thing. And then you mentioned that's where I would caution the automatic enrollment people. We want as many people to enroll in possible as we think it'd be easier for them. And that's the piece of enrolling, of extending this. We used to only have 6 months. We were recommending going to 12 months. We've been doing this for a while too with this 12 months. We kind of had that guidance. Because someone that owes $400, it's hopefully within 6 months they can maybe break it out. Someone that owes $2,000, 6 months, pay $2,000 a year.
Are the costs that are owed, are they spread equally across is it trash, electric, water, sewer? Is it more in one fund than the other? Is it across the board?
It's a little harder to pull that out, and I'll let John speak to that, what the system does. I would say the smallest amount is in trash.
Let me just say real quick to your question, we can look at the logistics of it, and I think our actions would be far more defensible if we treated the payment plan as a contract, that they are agreeing to do something over 12 months. And so that might be easier for us to defend when we get into this situation here on this side, if we treat it as this is a genuine agreement between the town and the customer. To your question, there's 2 pieces to that. It's a lot easier for me to get the information out just in total aggregates. But we do have prioritization. So, if somebody goes and pays them, electric gets the money first, even if they owe cost. Of these long-term balances, it's probably easiest to say. And because we send them one bill and then we credit it towards the biggest amount. It's a little harder to say which specific.
So, kind of going back to the timeline here, right? So I suggested moving up to disconnections. That was really predicated on the start in September 1st. I do agree with Mayor Pro Tem though that this is way longer than I had in my head, right? And then doing something at the break of a fiscal year, I think makes sense. It's also kind of marked the 2-year anniversary of, when this all started, right? So, it seems like a more natural point. I want to give staff enough time to task, prepare, get communications ready and all of that, right? It looks like that's ready by June. Anyways, right? So line out the line, what is now September 1st to July 1st, right? And really start rolling into the next fiscal year. But these important actually gives us a couple extra months before we kind of naturally, apply some discretion right through the winter months. But I think that situation is not sustainable. Right? We've effectively created a situation where either we're putting our utilities in a bad place from a budget point of view, or we need to raise rates, or basically asking everybody else to subsidize the non-payments of relatively few accounts. So I think we need to, especially now that we are in a steady state, because we had this conversation summer of last year, right? But kind of right when things were getting a little wonky again. And so at that point in time, it's okay, we got to get our own house in order before we start. Now that our house is in order, right, I think we need to start that enforcement sooner rather than later, right? And again, recognizing that staff needs a couple months to prepare for this, but July 1st seems to be a good time to get moving.
If we were just do a little bit, I mean, at this point, it's not the obvious operation to really get a little direction from the road. So I appreciate the thought. Make sure that is well.
Would this require a surge in man hours for what you would need to be doing? I mean, I'm just wondering if there's a opportunity, relatively reasonable cost to bring a consultant to ensure that we're, or to help, or maybe it's not, maybe it just becomes tough.
I think it's just, I mean, it's things that staff's going to have to do at some point anyway.
Yeah.
That's the standard procedure asking for a place, I think. And so now we have a lot of new staff, haven't done it, but we have staff that have, and they'll work through that. So Robert and his team will be prepared for that. And then Erica and her team, that's actually the next big one. So Erica, they typically with this one, she tells Troy go on to tell Millsoft to get everything in place because we did not put these numbers into the system. There was just no need to do it at the time.
So my initial thoughts are I support, I think again, and perhaps I'm overemphasizing the time of year of just if someone's disconnected and it's now 60 to 80 degrees instead of mid 90s or it's 30 degrees, right? But that also speaks to your point where there's another, I think, benefit to that, which is to slow down what seems to be a bit of a runaway train, right? So that we're not accumulating even more problems over that several months period. Now,
the older these belts get, the harder they become.
Yeah, right, exactly.
So it's relatively easy for a business to shut down and disappear on us, right? But they're also during larger balances than residential, but even residential, like, see, we're in a pretty transient area, right? So people come and go, and so those balances become uncollectible. You simply can find people.
And the more that balance accumulates, the more intimidating it is to the point where you just finally say, I'm just not dealing with it, as opposed to chipping away at it, or at least being willing to chip away.
And then there's the point of including impacting our credit rating, right? Potentially the violation of bond.
So here are the things that I'm anticipating from a communications perspective, and you likely have as well, but I just felt the need to put it out there. The very first one, I think sometime before communications officially begins, let me put it as a question before I add the two additional things. Is there a way for us to verify to the public, hey folks, there were some things that were moving around there, got to figure it out, we're good, we are, whatever you call it, back to standard procedure or what have you? Is there a way, because I imagine that somebody's going to push back and say, well, I never paid my bill, and the reason I didn't was because you folks couldn't figure it out. And it's like, you're right, and now we figured it out, we're all good to go, now let's start back over again.
Because we can always say that. What I would say is if we say that, maybe, to me, I feel like we're reiterating. I'm not saying we wouldn't say that.
All right.
I just feel like between what we posted online, what we've worked through, what Randy has been sharing at council meetings, like that's the message we've been trying to say at least over the last several months. And to the point of what the charts that showed where, in terms of different indicators of the service delivery, what's been happening, where we've kind of normalized. So yes, I mean, I think we are there. I think we've been trying to tell that story as we go.
Okay.
So
Just
maybe we
saying,
can
it's a
communicate
high
that more.
priority for emphasis up front at the beginning, because of what you're about to announce, right?
Yeah.
And then the next couple things I would say is so that the general public knows that we're only talking about a small percent. There's only a small percentage of folks. Most folks are on payment, and so I think that that's an important public communications message. And then the last is kind of the glass half full, which is once this gets paid up, that's $6 million that pays for. I mean, not literally, but my point is it's the equivalent of having something in your town. And so I think those are things that would be good from a PR perspective.
So something because that actually triggered another thought for me, Mr. Reese, in that with what you mentioned there, and then the question you asked earlier. One thing I would expect from this, just from past experience, and so it's some things we're still working through. So we have our, within just the normal operations, normal business. We have, you have things that we have to fix, things where things just happen, right? And sometimes customers just have questions. So they call us, so we work through those things. We have those calls. We still have residual that we're working through from, whether it be, people that have long-term not done, like they come and say, hey, I want to look at this. It's been a year. We're looking at it, because we're trying to deliver good customer service. So we're doing some of those things. There's things, well, no secret about it. With the new system of meter transfers over, the solar, our solar customers, we're not getting the meters. Like we know what to do to fix those. Sometimes they still pop up as we transition meters, but we're fixing those. But we got to work through those. When we make this announcement, regardless of when we do it, we will get an influx of questions that people are coming to set up payment plans, appropriately so, and we appreciate that, and they're going to do that. And so Robert's team and Darla's team are going to get slammed pretty hard by that. But then we are going to have the folks that, to your point of like, well, I don't been doing anything because of this, and then you can challenge it. And what we have done, and what I will continue to do, because from a customer service standpoint, the right thing is we sit down with it if needed. We've written emails and memos and done analysis reports, and so that takes time. So you asked about resources, so there is an impact of what we will still do it. We need to do it. I think we've been doing it, but just kind of keeping in mind that when we step off, when we step off into this and saying, here's what's going to happen, it's going to create that next spike of.
And I think you've actually done a great job.
It is. I agree. I just want to bring awareness of
But when it comes to the top of this, there's the phrase in terms of communication. Tell them what you're going to tell them, and then tell them what you told them. That's all I'm thinking about when it comes to solidifying that message.
I wanted to just go back and reemphasize too that the number I remember seeing is 8% or over.
Yeah.
So 92% of our accounts are in compliance, right? So then you're looking at 8%, and if we normally have a 3%, or so you're really talking about a 5%. So I think when we get into this level of effort, and I'm not saying we don't want to put a huge level of effort, we will put a level of effort into it. But at the end of the day, we're looking to impact 5%. And so proportionate, and there can be unintended consequences too on that 92% by what we communicate, how we communicate, and what we're allowing, we're not allowing. So as we step into this and really look to focus our level of effort, we're talking about 5% of accounts. I think that because of the approach we're phasing in, where we're not just leading off with, we're cutting off, we're doing late fees, there's going to be a grace period still. I think you'll start to see compliance during that period. Then you're going to have the late fee discussion. You're going to see some compliance there. Then you're going to have the threat of disconnect. You'll see compliance. And I think you'll naturally see us come down to where we'll normally be, which is still, we've always historically had a level of unpaid balances. So we're committed to doing the level of effort, but I want to put it in proportion. And that 92% of our accounts are a good thing. Really fun.
And what I'm saying is in terms of how conversations occur, especially on social media, there are certain voices who are going to be in that 8% who have an outsized role in saying how unfairly they've been treated by the town. And I think it's important for folks to know that it's a small percentage of loud voices.
Thank you.
General direction from the group. I just want to make sure we're clear. Like timeline wise, because we know what we kind of live one here, favorite one here. I don't know if you had any call or how.
Sounds like you are one way.
No, I was just.
I think I'm
generally supportive. It sounded like the three of you on a more accelerated timeline.
Okay, I just want to be clear for it. All right, we've got that direction.
But I do want to kind of echo Councilman Reese's points. If we need to get some temp staff and to help us to get right, let's not be shy about asking for that. Right, instead of running roughshod on our staff who has done a lot of work again, take themselves out of that hole, right? And then so this is going to be tough on staff, no matter what, right? No matter when we do this, right? And so if we do need to get some, temporary people in place to deal with the workload, then let's have that conversation.
Where are those bench points? And the ramping up and getting the systems in place, and then obviously when we start to send out notices.
I was actually gonna say that we do have one more slide where we were.
And you're gonna be
proposing-
increasing calls to your Ask Apex, so I don't know what that means.
We were discussing kind of what we wanted to do in terms of reporting to management and council about that, but, I think we could package that all up into kind of a more realistic assessment. So we'll just, put it in as TBD.
I like the bi-weekly reports, right? I think we're kind of already on that cadence, become kind of normal updates and like, gotta get a session, just like Brandy just kind of declares mission accomplished on the call backlog last week, right? We dropped to kind of a normal healthy number of just, what we consider is just a normal call volume. Wherever we draw the line, whether it's 500,000, 400,000, at some point you gotta say, yeah, we're materially back at our normal state, and at that point, we'll stop with bi-weekly updates.
Thank you all. Appreciate it. Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, good for today. Tomorrow, I just wanted to hit some highlights and reiterate a couple things. Okay, so we've got the legislative is what we will start with. Of course, breakfast, courtesy of the clerk's office. Thank you for that. Then we'll have legislative agendas. So again, if you haven't taken some time, maybe tonight, spend a little time brainstorming or thinking through. There'll be an activity. We're going to go a little bit more traditional with our activities tomorrow. It'll be more of the dots and stickies and things like that. We'll have legislative, and we will have a presentation on the community survey from Stacy, and I believe Zen City will be available, or we'll have them call in to it as well. Then a break. Then we'll have a new initiative development brainstorming session, and then we'll go into hot topics. What I've got listed for hot topics, we've got yard waste subject, which we will revisit. We've asked John and Brandon to come for that as well. We've got Commerce Street, pick up that debate a little bit, and then I put the expansion of the streetscaping project, which we didn't get to today. So those will be 3 identified hot topics. If you have any other hot topics you'd like to bring, those are the 3 that we was the last one. The streetscaping expansion, and we're going to talk about it today. Oh yeah, and we can get to it, so we'll leave that for tomorrow. Then we have a 30-minute lunch, and that's when Alan says he can bring in the council policy development brainstorming session that we had slated for today. That, and then our work is done, and then there's a exercise with the consultant that's coming in to the council. Right. Okay. Sound good? That's good. All right. That's it.
No, just thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'll be there.